Laura Dawson surveyed the row of long division problems she had written on the blackboard. Noting the blurring of a number in the third problem, she frowned, took the eraser, and scrubbed away the offending numeral, replacing it with a neatly written 7 that could not be misinterpreted as a 1. Thank goodness San Francisco's Clement Grammar School was only 4 years old, so the slate board that filled the entire back of the room didn't have the chips and scratches that marred the board in the Cupertino Creek School, the rural one-room school west of San Jose where she taught this past fall. Picking up a list of words from her desk, she began copying them carefully onto the board. For some reason, words she had known how to spell since she was 5 came out wrong when she wrote them for all to see, and she wanted to avoid the humiliation she'd felt back at Cupertino Creek when the pert 7-year-old Daisy pointed out her errors to the whole class, accompanied by the snickers of 17-year-old Buck Morrison, who slouched insolently in the last row. Laura hadn't admitted to anyone how badly her first teaching assignment had gone. None of the lectures in pedagogy at the San Jose Normal School had prepared her for how difficult it was to maintain discipline when a one-room school held 30 students, ranging from a 5-year-old who couldn't sit still for more than 15 minutes to a 17-year-old with the body of a man and the maturity of a boy half his age. Then there was the local wildlife that would drop by just as she got everyone settled down to work at their slates. She shuddered at the memory of the mother skunk that had constructed her nest under the floorboards. The school board examiner had given her a commendation for her pupil's progress, but she thought that this gentleman was mostly impressed she'd stuck out the full term, something the last 2 teachers failed to do. Perhaps he hoped if he praised her enough she would stay on. Laura felt a twinge of guilt, because that commendation had helped pave the way for her new position, teaching a 7th grade class at the Clement Grammar in San Francisco. However, she was determined to do better with this new job. Wednesday evening, January 7th, 1880. 120 OFarrell. Nice, sunny, furnished rooms, double and single. San Francisco Chronicle, 1880. Annie Fuller was angry. No, she was furious. How could this have happened? How could she ever face Nate's parents? What could she say to explain how their daughter, who they had so reluctantly handed over into her care, had been assaulted, practically at her doorstep? And Nate, what would he do when she told him? She pulled the shawl more closely around Laura, who sat huddled in the boarding house kitchen rocker by the old cook stove, and the girl curled into herself further, her face hidden by the long strands of dark hair that had escaped from the neatly coiled braid at the back of her head. Or at least the coil had been neat this morning when Laura left the boarding house on her way to work. Annie had refrained from saying goodbye to her young boarder at that time, since she was already costumed as Madame Sybil, a scarlet shawl over her old black silk, a Medusa-like black wig covering her own reddish blonde hair, and white powder hiding the light dusting of freckles that were scattered across her nose. She preferred not to interact with anyone but Sybil's clients when she was dressed this way. Instead, she'd gone to the window of the small parlor where she met those clients and peeped through the curtains at the younger woman, noting the similarities between Laura and her older brother Nate. Both were tall, straight-backed, and dark-haired, with long-legged strides. Laura's skin was paler, and thank goodness she didn't have her brother's nose, which gave him the look of a bird of prey. But they both were graced by the dark brown and slightly oblique eyes and the high cheekbones that recalled their distant Shawnee ancestor. Watching as Laura walked confidently up the sidewalk, her shoulders thrown back as if she was going into battle, Annie had felt such pride in the young woman. She knew that Laura was going to work early because she was determined to excel at her new teaching position. Yet now the poor girl sat in the kitchen, mud smeared on the lower half of her skirt, her hair in disarray, her confidence gone, and shivering in fear because of some brute. I could strangle whoever it was with my bare hands.